It's Felicia here. Welcome back to my educational series. I'm a medical mom teaching others about my sweet daughter and also about how to be compassionate and to understand a little bit more about those who have medical needs. So today we are talking about nurse support. I get this question a lot. They ask me, why do you have nurses? Why does Cali need nurses? Why can't you do it yourself? It's a very heavily loaded question and I will try my best to break it down. So first, every region and area is very different, but we live in the Seattle area. And in order for us to leave home, our hospital required us to have nurse support. Like they literally said, you cannot go home without having at least 4 nights and 4 days covered. And that might sound like, wait, why? How can they hold you, in a sense, hostage? It wasn't really hostage, but it just was a requirement. And for us, it was a stressful period of time because we were in the hospital during the pandemic. So we had a daughter who requires a ventilator, who breathes out of her trach. And what was COVID-19 doing? It was putting people on ventilators because of respiratory issues. And I'll pause quickly here because I realized some people are joining me for the first time. My daughter was born with a rare syndrome called Pfeiffer syndrome. So pause and watch this video here to learn a little bit more about her background. But if you've gotten this far, I'm assuming that you are already educated on the previous videos of how we got here and you're here to learn more about Cali. Okay. So we couldn't leave without having nurse support. And our hospital is one of the best in the world. They see about 130 kids with Pfeiffer syndrome, with the cousin syndrome a year. And your typical like smaller hospital, everyday hospital I should say, sees about 3 to 4 kids. So they're expertise and we trust them. But also research shows that kids with trachs have a higher rate of mortality in their first year of life due to emergency situations, through trachs getting plugged, through inadequate training and understanding of how to respond in an emergency situation. And so because of that, they really push to have you have nurse support and someone who's very experienced with a child with a trach. So that is what they required. I know families who were there for additional 6 months because they were looking for nurse support. Some hospitals don't require that. Some hospitals allow you to go home without it, but also there's this idea of accessibility. So you might live in a rural area that doesn't allow you to have nurse support. So what do you do then? And I don't have the answers there. I literally just know what was required from us from our hospital. And I'm honestly really thankful for it because you become a mom and you're trying to learn how to care and keep your child alive. That's like your goal, to give them love, to care for them. And when my daughter's care has become a point where it needs a medical, it needs nurses, it needs people who are experienced and trained, I wanted all the support I could have. And what me and my husband found, that it gave us the ability to continue to live. I mean, it gave us a peace of mind. So those who are out there and caring for their child with medical needs and don't have nurses, I've talked to them and they're sleeping with their child in the same room. They're getting little sleep, or maybe they're not going back to work because it requires that much attention. Some states are starting to pay parents who are caregivers because it requires you to stop working to care for your child, but therefore you don't have an income, therefore you don't have insurance. It is a cycle, you guys. So our nurses gave us the ability to continue to work, to continue to take care of ourselves so we can be there for our daughter and to also allow her to thrive. Our doctors, they told us that Cali has been like almost like a poster child for her syndrome, for the rate at which it took her to get off of her vent, to breathe on her own, to be trying her PNV, like all the steps she took. Really, I don't think we could have gotten there without amazing nurses in our home. So the moment Cali became a child who would need a trach, it immediately allowed us to be required, or to meet the requirements from a nursing agency as well as insurance, to have private in-home nursing care. That is what our insurance was. So please remember, everything I'm telling you is very unique to our situation because it's our insurance, it's our state, it's the hospital we go to, and these were all the requirements. So be able to go home, we had to have our nurse. And thankfully, it took us just from when we were cleared to when we got home, I think it was an additional 6 weeks we were there looking for adequate amount of nursing support to be able to come home and care for Cali. So I'm very thankful for it. The things that they do, they are amazing individuals. And the first thing is that they're her medical support. So when Cali was little, she came home with a ventilator. So they were experienced and well versed in how her ventilator worked. It was pushing air through, it was helping her breathe. They help with her trach. So her trach is like, you guys, it needs to be cleaned, okay? It needs to be cleaned, it needs to be changed. So they do traecare. So to learn how to clean around the stoma, and the stoma is the opening of where your trach sits, and to clean around her neck, to place the new ties on. We change her trach once a month. They do respiratory support for her, whether that be a nebulizer to help bring humidified air with saline through her lungs and through her mouth and her nose and her airway to help with her breathing. They administer medicine. They're always monitoring her for any signs of distress or signs where she might need medicine for other things. When she gets sick, they're amazing because she needs a lot of the suctioning when she's sick, and almost it could be once every 5 minutes, you guys. Like, that's how frequent it could be. So they're always suctioning her to keep that trach clear. Her trach is like a small straw. So if you go an hour without suctioning, that's gonna block her airway, which is not gonna allow her to breathe. They also work with our doctors in our pharmacy to get medicine. They are licensed professionals, so they administer her medicine for her. And because Cali is nonverbal, a lot of this you have to be eyes on her and visually see her to know what she needs and respond to that. She has a shunt, which I'll do a whole nother video of what a shunt is. It's placed in the back of her head to help drain all the fluid, the cerebral fluid from her brain, which was caused through the craniosynostosis, which is caused through Pfeiffer syndrome, which drains into her stomach. That can get clogged, and that can cause headaches, vomiting, fever. There's a lot of different signs. So because Cali is so complex, she needs to have someone who knows what those signs are and can be able to respond to it. That a shunt failure would mean we need to go to the hospital. So I'm listing a lot of things, and that's all just within like the first year of her life, that medical side of things that she needed, that they were the point person. So as you can imagine, that's a full-time job. So if those were all the things I had to do on top of her therapy, on top of love her, on top of the activities we want to do, I wouldn't have time to work. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to have the insurance that we have that can cover all these things. And I can't get the insurance without going to work. And with work comes the nurses. Is it starting to click here? So we're very privileged, I will say, to have the support. And we're also just blessed and thankful to have them. Those are the mandatory things they do. On top of that, like I said, they're amazing human beings that want to help Cali thrive and to get to the next level. So now that Cali's in a stage where she goes to preschool, they go to school with her. In our district, because Cali is deemed as a medical needs child, being nonverbal and having a trach and having a suction machine, it needs to be someone who's trained on that suction machine to be able to suction her. Her teacher cannot stop and go suction her. That is not required from a teacher. So in order for her to be in school, she has to have a one-on-one aid. The nurses can help with activities, which they do sometimes, but when we're at home, they also help. They help with therapy. So if she's in speech therapy, they can help assist her, redirect her. We create care plans and say we really want Cali at the end of this year to be able to eat by mouth and to be able to be breathing. So they're there to support her in those needs. And so the way that looks is that we might have 15 minutes of dedicated time in the morning where they will work on her motor skills and working on different activities to get her to move her mouth and to wear her PMV. We might say we want to focus on learning what she did at school in colors, and so they'll take her through activities that we planned out. We'll talk about mobility, and so getting her outside for walks so she can get those limbs moving. So they support her just life needs as well as her medical needs. And that is a blessing right there. And you might hear me say blessing so many times in this video because like our nurses truly are a blessing. But that should answer your question of why she needs a nurse, why it is not my husband and I who are her nurse, and sometimes why we might say we are caregiving. Because being a parent, I think is very different than caregiving. A parent, we're gonna give her love, we're gonna make sure she's fed, we're gonna make sure that she understands the values and all of those things. But to caregive is like this special group of making sure this person is alive. 5 is making sure that their needs, their medical needs are cared for, because they don't have the ability to do that for themselves. And so your typical kid, as they get older, might be able to tell you they have to go potty, be able to breathe on their own, be able to clear their secretions and suction. She can't do that. So therefore, that caring for her is that medical side. That's why we talk about the caregiving. Whereas we're wearing the parent hat all the time, but honestly, we're wearing both hats all the time for her. And so there are days where we don't have nurses, and me and my husband, we are trained. So one of the things that we had to do before we left the hospital was get 20 hours of training. That was via Zoom, that was via in person. So they would teach us how to do a trach change, which is when you take the trach out, you clean around that stoma area, the opening, and you place a new one in. So you don't want to leave the same trach in for a whole year or anything. It needs to be sanitized and clean, because that's how germs get in or infections get in, because she has an opening, like a opening in her body that was man-made, woman-made, and so her body tries to reject it sometimes to close it in, and so it's easily able to get infected. So we had to learn how to do that, do it on a doll, then go to the hospital and successfully do it for Cali, get cleared off by a nurse that said you did it correctly, actually by a respiratory therapist. And then at the end of the 20 hours, we learned a lot of different things. We had to be able to care for her for 24 hours straight without any help from nurses. Once they said that you could do it and we did it properly, we got the okay, me and my husband both had to do our own 24 hours. The nurses would step in if you missed medicine by, I think it was 2-hour frame, because they don't want anything to go wrong, you know, but they want to make sure that you know how to do things. And so once we were cleared for 24 hours, then it was like, you have passed your test, you can care for your child. Like, sometimes I think I would love to have that for my son who doesn't have medical needs, of like all the training of what to do in certain situations, but you don't get that. But as a medical parent, you do. Like, we had to be trained before we could take her home. And once we got cleared is when they then said, okay, now let's look for nursing support. So me and my husband know how to do all the things the nurses know how to do. And we do have days where we don't have nurse support and we are functioning like your other families where it's just us. But our nurses are there during the day, but they also watch her at night when she's sleeping. We have an oximeter that wraps around her toe that checks her breathing. It checks her heart rate to making sure everything's good. It alarms if either one of those numbers gets too low, which means something's going on. Is it that we didn't suction her and she's got like a mucus plug? Is she getting sick? The machines tell us a lot about her body because she verbally can't tell us what's going on. So the nurses monitor her at night. They are there, they have to be up, they have to be awake. They watch a monitor, sometimes they sit in the room with her. She gets medicine throughout the night, and she also gets fed throughout the night. So when they are not there, it is me or my husband. We tend to sleep on a blow-up mattress right next to her. Yes, and it's not the best sleep. Like, I'm asleep, but I'm not in any core level sleep. I can hear when she coughs. I can hear when she breathes a little bit differently. So you can just imagine how restful of sleep that we were getting. We were sleeping there throughout the night. Prior to us having really good support, there were times where we were with her at night 3 to 4 times a night. And me and my husband would switch, and we still had to get up and go to work. Oh, those days were long. So I hope you understand a little bit more about, the steps to getting nursing support, why we have support, what that looks like, what they do, what that function is. But like I will always say, we're thankful for the support, and it's allowed us to be able to have our son Roman, because we still have the love and time that we can pour into another child. And Cali is also just becoming a lot more stable, that she's getting to a great place where she can start to advocate for herself in different ways, whether it be if she has a mucus plug or needs to be suctioned, she'll pull you towards the suction machine, which is a beautiful thing to see her being able to be aware of her body. All right, guys, so drop a comment down here. Like I said, I am on a roll, okay, on my educational series. So if you have any other questions or comments, please leave them below. And just thank you for your support. Thank you for being willing to learn for this amount of time and to continue watching our videos, because you are showing that you care, but not just for my daughter, but for others out there who are going through the same situation, that you now have more knowledge on how you can support them.